I get asked this question a lot, so I thought I would do a little video on it. And the question is, why do I keep attracting unavailable partners? Now, that can be emotionally unavailable partners, physically unavailable partners, or all of the above. So I thought I would just answer it as unavailable partners. That's a really easy question to answer because it feels familiar. If you think of the word familiar, you will hear the word familial, perhaps, and certainly you will hear the word family. Because what we do growing up is we normalize the family and relationships that we are born into until we go out into the world and see how other families live, which is around maybe 7 years old or older for most of us. I mean, some of you may have slept over at a cousin's house or a relative's house, but most of us don't spend time with other families outside of our own until we're, in the early years of our life in school. So when we see what others consider to be expected but may be severely dysfunctional or much more desirable. So what I mean by that is we may look at other families and think, wow, they're really different than us. Their father shouts a lot, or there's a lot of drinking going on, or whatever. Or they may see the reverse. They may see, this is a very calm family, and my family isn't that calm, and I would like to have more of that. So this is where we begin to look at and create some discernment around it, because the first 7 years of our lives, 0 to 7, are the really formative years of our life, where we're developing our personality based on what we see in the world and how the world affects us, especially the container that we've grown up in, which is our family. The first 3 years of our lives, we are fairly nonverbal, and we're really just absorbing everything in our world, and we have to have our needs met. But as you have heard me say many times, there are 3 basic needs. And this type of style of attracting another person goes back to our birth and our childhood, and it is predominantly epigenetic, not genetic. So what I mean by that is, when we're born, we have these 3 basic needs: to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted, and or loved. If our basic needs are not met, we do not feel secure. So we adapt our personality to securely attach to others in a dysfunctional way, such as anxious attachment, ambivalent attachment, or disorganized attachment. And I'm going to flesh these out a little bit. But what I really want you to understand about this is that we have these 3 basic needs, and they're not always able to be met within the family situation. Not because our parents didn't love us, because I know my parents loved me very, very much. However, I'll use myself as an example. There was a lot of stressors in my family, mental health, physical health, financial issues. And that reduces the ability for the parent caregiver to attune to the child. So what we do is, when we attach to them based on those stressors, that is going to determine, certainly in that part of our lives, and this can be changed, by the way, that's going to determine which attachment style we develop. And the one I haven't mentioned is secure attachment, which is the most desirable. So I'm going to open up and flesh out attachment styles a little bit, but what I really want you to know is nothing is fixed. They can change in your lifetime when you do the self-healing work, or work with somebody that can bring your attention to these attachment styles, and you can then make better and different choices. And if you remember, the Paradise Process has 4 pillars of healing, which is awareness. So this is awareness of our patterns, acceptance, accepting that this is who we are in the moment, and not being angry with ourselves and sitting with those feelings and emotions. Then we become more conscious, and then we make better choices. So the first one I'm going to talk about is secure attachment. Now that's very straightforward, and I'm going to use metaphor to explain it. And the metaphor is, a child is in the playground and falls down and hurts its knee. And depending on what the parent caregiver does, begins to inform their attachment style. So child falls down, hurts its knee. in a securely attached situation, the parent gets up, goes to the child, makes sure the child is okay, does what it needs to do to maybe address the wound or whatever, give it a hug, make sure it feels okay, make sure it feels safe, and then the parent goes back and sits on the bench. The child carries on playing because they feel secure. They've been seen and heard and acknowledged. Now, the other ones, the first one being anxious attachment style, which is also referred to as ambivalent, goes like this. And these are very basic examples, but helps you to understand. And they are: the child falls down, hurts its knee, and sometimes the parent caregiver gets up and comes to the child's aid, and sometimes they don't. So it's very ambivalent. It's not fixed, it's not secure, it's not reliable for the child to get their needs met. So what does the child begin to think? Well, the child begins to become anxious because the child doesn't know what's coming. The child doesn't know if they're going to be seen, heard, and acknowledged and looked after in that moment, or if the parent is going to continue to sit on the bench reading their book, being on their phone, talking to somebody else. So going forward in life, they will anxiously attach to others, and what that will look like is, or could look like, is there's a lot of anxiety in the relationship. They're insecure about whether their partner loves them or cares about them. Sometimes their partner will go away and they won't be able to sleep or eat, or when their partner is there, they want their partner to come back, and when their partner comes back, they may gaslight them. They may drop bombs on them, emotional bombs on them, where they push them away. So the partner gets very confused. Do you love me? Do you want me to be with me? Do you want me to be away? So there's very ambivalent push-pull in that relationship. The next one is avoidant attachment style. So this child falls down and the parent doesn't get up. The parent just sits there reading the book, talking to a friend, being on their phone. And the child quickly begins to learn that no one comes when you need them. So what am I going to do? I'm going to look after myself. And this manifests in a relationship by being hyper independent. I don't need anybody. I don't need a relationship. And then they get into a relationship, but the relationship is very removed from them. They find it hard to commit. They want to be with the person, but they don't need the person. And this is very difficult for the partner because the partner is looking for a space for them to fit into. And if we don't need help and want help, then the person on the other side of that doesn't really know what their position is. And this could be, this could show up as really pushing the partner away, sometimes betraying them to show them that they don't need them, that they can be with other people and they don't just need them. And the fourth one is disorganized attachment. Now, disorganized is another step above. Disorganized is all of the things I've told you. So that's ambivalent, anxious, and it's also avoidant. But this has another dimension to it, and that dimension is an incredible level of fear. And full disclosure, this was my attachment style for decades. And what this looks like is the child falls down and hurts itself. Now, when the parent caregiver does come, because sometimes they don't, they come with anger, they come with disappointment. They might pull the child up physically and say, "You stupid child, you're so clumsy, you always fall down. Why did you do that?" So this child grows up with a lot of fear of hurting themselves or a lot of fear of making a mistake. And they go into relationship with all of the attachment styles except not much secure attachment. And they show up, it's very confusing for their partner. And in my situation, what I did is I wanted my father's attention, and my father had an issue with rage, and I don't blame him. He had a very traumatic childhood that was never dealt with, was never healed in any way. So there's no blame there. There's a lot of compassion and understanding now. However, I didn't know that as a child. All I knew was my father was angry. My father sometimes thought I was stupid and clumsy, and I was very tall, so it was very easy for me to be clumsy and fall over. So what I did with my attachment style is I went out into the world looking for a man just like my father, because it comes back to the familiar. I normalized our relationship. He is the first opposite sex in my world, and as a heterosexual person, that is what I got my information from. I got it from him for relationships with men, and I normalized that. And as dysfunctional as it was, it felt familiar, and then it felt safe. So we can get very attached and feel safe in a dysfunctional relationship, which is exactly what I did. And the other thing that happens is I wanted that man like my father, but this time I wanted redemption. I wanted him to have all the other things that I needed, to see me, to hear me, to acknowledge me, to love me, and that never works. So I just want you to take a moment and ask yourself, which one do you think you are? Are you a very securely attached person in relationship? Have lots of flexibility, feel safe when your partner is there, feel safe when your partner isn't there? Or are you ambivalent anxious? Anxious when they're not there, ambivalent about how you feel about them, not really sure about making a commitment? Or are you avoidant? I can do it all myself. Yeah, it's nice to have a person in my life, but I don't really need you. Or are you disorganized, having the second and third of those attachment styles, but also having a high level of fear in relationship? So every relationship is a mirror of where we are emotionally at that time. And it's not you, it's me. Now, when we hear that phrase, it's usually said to us in a situation where somebody's breaking up with us and they don't know how to. So they say, oh, darling, it's not you, it's me. But I turn this around because it's not them, it is us. It is us. We need to go inside and ask ourselves, what did they activate in me? What did they trigger in me? Because that is the wound that you've been carrying around. That is the coping strategy that you've been carrying around. That is the trauma response that you have been carrying around. So I want you to ask yourself that question. What did they activate in me? Because I'm going to get you to ask yourself a few questions, and you can get a pen and paper if you wish, or replay this part at the end and ask yourself these questions. The next question is there a pattern in my relationships? Look for a pattern. There was definitely a pattern in my relationship. Most of the men even looked like my father, sounded like my father, acted like my father, but didn't have the part that I really needed. When you can identify that there is a pattern, what is the pattern? So connect it back to the attachment styles. Is it ambivalent, anxious? Is it avoidant? Is it disorganized? And ask yourself the question is, do I feel safe in my current relationship, or did I feel safe in my previous relationships? And finally, do I feel seen, heard, and acknowledged? Now do that in your current relationship and also in your past relationships. These questions will really help you to discover where you are and to be able to go on the healing path so that you stop attracting unavailable partners. The good news is that I did go on my healing journey, because I want you to know that it is possible to change. And I've now been in a securely attached relationship for 4 years, still going strong. But I'm going to tell you this, at first it's not comfortable at all, because it's not comfortable to be treated well. It's not comfortable to be considered when you're not used to it and that isn't your safe space. So I did struggle with that. But I also have help for that. So I want you to just ask yourself these questions, connect to your attachment style,